Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching.
Her husband, and he, when he returns, will give her a whole house or a mansion. Naturally, the man did not return and later asked for a divorce and threatened to kill her. When the girls did not give up, the swindler played to the last role of the prince, but to finally realize the scam, intervened Mother Tyrant, who tormented the bride of the sun. Thanks to tyrannical mother-in-law, the girls ran away from the swindler, not asking for anything back. To present anything to this pair of swindlers was difficult, as the victims themselves all formalized everything on the man. No one forced them, especially since the swindler first time provided the desires of his women and collected checks for their maintenance. Closing the article about the scammer, Scarlett sighed noisily and waited for a reply from the company that dealt with investigations. An hour later, the girls called and gave a positive answer to her assumption. Soon the surveillance of her beloved husband, as well as her mother-in-law, would begin, which meant that it would be barely possible to find out the truth about her marriage. At first, the detectives did not notice anything suspicious for Harry, as well as for his mother-in-law, who sat at home all day long. But then they were surprised by one case. The man regularly began to visit a lawyer and then even went to the police several times. Private investigators, it seemed strange, and they sent a photo of Scarlett. The girl had already painted a bunch of negative scenarios in her own imagination, but before the divorce, she decided to talk to Harry. Harry noticed the surveillance of himself and guessed that Scarlett heard his conversation with his mom and hired private investigators. The man was finally convinced of this hunch after he checked his wife's laptop. She hadn't even deleted her search history. Harry was offended that his mother and wife thought he was some kind of Alfonso. He decided to teach them a lesson, but first he needed to play along with both of them that he was going to actually take away his wife's apartment. Harry began to regularly visit the lawyer who reissued the new housing dacha on him, and he went to the police a couple of times to ask when his friend would get out of the isolation ward for fighting in the club. The man could solve everything with a few calls, but knowing that he was being watched, he began to deliberately do everything openly so that his wife would get suspicions. The evening came. Scarlett prepared for a serious conversation, but Harry still did not come home from work. Suddenly, close to 1 o'clock, she heard the door open. The girl got out of bed in a shirt and ran to meet her husband. The man saw his wife and smiled, and then embraced her and went to the kitchen, and the girl followed them. While Harry was resting and eating dinner, Scarlett kept thinking how to start a dialogue. The man decided to spare the girl the agony and started the conversation himself. "You know, I've got some work problems. I urgently need to register the apartment on me. I myself will not have time to do everything. Tomorrow, I'm leaving on a business trip. You can help me, then I'll pay you back. I can even sign over the house to you. It's literally a week's worth of work." Scarlett's jaw dropped when she heard what her husband was saying. Could it really be true? There's no such thing as princes. It was just a beautiful fairy tale, Scarlett. Her eyes darkened with anger and she slapped her husband with all her might. "We're getting a divorce." Harry only smirked and said quietly out loud, "Of course we're getting a divorce because you thought I was a con artist because of one word my mother said. Didn't even bother to find out." Harry did not stop his wife the next day when she decided to move in and even helped to take things away. A month later, the couple was safely divorced. And so, when Harry and Scarlett began to leave the court, the man turned around and said the following to his ex-wife. "And you know what the funny thing is? I really loved you, and you only heard part of the dialogue with my mother. You hired honest investigators and dumped me the first chance you got. You have no idea how many people have talked me out of marrying you, but I didn't listen to anyone. I make 10 times what you do. I don't need your little apartment in the center of Manchester. It's just stupid. But the good thing is, I've met a new love and you have no place." Harry seemed to Scarlett a real prince on a white horse. At first, he gave the girl gifts, took her to the best places in the city, then invited me to extreme meetings in the form of bungee jumping in the mountains. And all this business, he exclusively for romantic purposes, not to get a girl into bed. Scarlett was truly in love for the first time in her life. There was no point in doubting Harry. He was always in touch with her, never bored her, and even learned all the foods the girl was allergic to. The faster the relationship between the couple developed, the more Scarlett realized that it was time for them to get married. And so at another meeting in a restaurant, a young wealthy man named Harry proposed to the girl. She happily accepted, jumping with happiness and covering her face with her hands. It seemed to her that Harry was reading her mind. Everything she had ever wanted from a man, she had gotten from Harry. What she didn't know at the time, however, was that the ideal of their relationship would be shattered by her mother-in-law. At the wedding, Scarlett noticed that her mother-in-law was constantly picking on her. Yes, worth a teasing, leering look. But the girl hoped that sooner or later Scarlett, the mother-in-law named Hannah, will accept the choice of her son. But no, after the wedding, the old woman only activated and began to annoy Scarlett with renewed vigor, the girl every time with horror waiting for a meeting with her mother-in-law. After all, according to Hannah, the daughter-in-law cooks badly, cleans incorrectly, what to speak of outfits and budget management. At some point, Scarlett could not stand it and decided to complain to her husband. Harry made a decision to reduce communication with his mother and not invite her to visit. Surprisingly, the mother-in-law temporarily quieted down and didn't even retaliate, or so it seemed to Scarlett. And after a year, the woman asked to visit for 3 days because she had a heart condition. And of course, Harry, as a real man, could not refuse his mother and took her in. The first 2 days, everything was fine. No quarrels, no claims. The woman practically did not leave her room on the 4th floor, but on the 3rd day, everything changed. The mother-in-law came down to the kitchen at night and called out to her son Harry. As Scarlett dozed in the hall, the older woman was sure her son's wife could hear everything, so she started talking quite loudly. At first, she was talking about all sorts of nonsense related to real estate, but then her mother-in-law said a few phrases that automatically opened Scarlett's eyes. She'll buy the apartment, then you'll divorce her, and then we'll be able to communicate normally again and continue working on our business. Scarlett didn't understand what her husband's mother was talking about. After all, Harry already had a lot of money, and so did she. What the apartment had to do with it was unclear. A little worried and thinking, the girl fell into a dream. Waking up in the morning, Scarlett remembered the words of her mother-in-law. She suddenly felt scared. Maybe Harry seemed so perfect because he was a con artist. Realizing that her heart will not rest without a check, the girl decided to learn more about marriage scammers and hire a private detective who will follow Harry's every move. After studying articles on the internet and reading several books, Scarlett again became uncomfortable. According to all the laws of the genre, con artists at first behave perfectly, spend a lot of money on a new victim to then take everything from her. The last article that finished the girl was titled as follows: "The scammer poor consisted of a son and a mother, never caught by the police." The article was about a young man from Manchester meeting a girl and seducing them and then getting married. After the wedding, he had business problems due to lack of residence registration, so it was necessary to register an apartment in his name, as all his housing was registered to his mother. The swindler pressed on the urgency of the event and always ran a fictitious business trip, so that the victims themselves formalized their apartments in his name. Allegedly, look for a new one. Buy it will take time, and large transfers from one country to another will cause questions. Therefore, the wife was to simply register her apartment on. Scarlett had been a lonely woman for a very long time. When all of her classmates got married and had children, she hadn't even been in a relationship once. The first kiss happened quite late. She was 20 years old at the time, and the first person who really proposed something serious to her turned out to be the mailman who regularly brought letters to her house. The first time, their relationship developed well, but then the girl realized that the man was inert and stingy on any emotions, so they had to part. Scarlett was left alone again. To somehow divorce, the girl began to visit the fitness room, book clubs, various trainings. And at one of the classes on revealing the inner self, the girl noticed a blue-eyed blonde who not only listened attentively to the trainer, but also wrote down his words. Already by the end of the class, Scarlett heard the name of the handsome stranger. His name was Harry. The girl was glad that she had learned at least something about the young and charming man sitting near her in a blue tuxedo. But she realized that he probably wouldn't pay any attention to her, and neither would the other men. But within half an hour, Scarlett realized her mistake. When the class was over, everyone was given booklets to read. People began to leave, But not Scarlett. She was suddenly thirsty, literally thirsty. She asked the leaders of the event to give her something to drink, but as it turned out, no one had even a small bottle of mineral water. Scarlett had to wait 10 minutes in an empty gym. The coach ran to another floor and literally squeezed one bottle of water from the ballerinas. After Scarlett was able to drink, she caught her breath, walked out of the gym, and headed for the exit of the building. As she stepped out onto the porch, the girl saw small drops of water falling from the sky. But within a minute, a downpour began to fall and wet her clothes. Scarlett wanted to call a cab, but her phone couldn't catch a dial tone, so the girl decided to go back inside. But as she jerked at the door, she realized it was locked. Scarlett decided to run down the street in the rain to find the nearest bus, stopped Scarlett a secluded place to call from. But after 15 minutes of searching, she realized she was trapped by the weather. Suddenly, a white foreign car appeared on the empty road. The front view window rolled down and a familiar head emerged from the car. The same Harry from the self-development group was looking at her. The first thing he said was, "You're going to be let down, charming stranger." Then the man continued his monologue. "I see you're soaking wet. If you keep running around here like that, you're going to catch a cold." Scarlett smiled and nodded, then replied, "Yes, I'd be glad if you give me a ride. I'm really cold and it looks like I'm going to have to throw my tank top in the trash." Scarlett deftly opened the door of the front standing car and climbed into the front seats. Once there, the man smiled and started the car. 15 minutes later, Harry had already driven to Scarlett's house. Before dropping the girl off, he asked, "What's your name? I liked you so much when I saw you. You were sitting next to me, smiling sweetly. Yes, I was afraid to approach you at first, but when I saw you on the road, I realized that it was fate." The girl blushed, tried to answer sweetly to the new acquaintance. "I'm Scarlett. I want to get to know you better. You can come with me tomorrow at 10. I want to attend a course on self-discovery again. We'll continue our conversation there." "Agreed?" Harry nodded and smiled broadly. Scarlett got out of the car, heading towards the house. After a couple of seconds, Harry's car disappeared from the girl's sight. Scarlett walked to the porch and realized there was no way she could stop smiling. Yes, she was cold, but today her ideal man was paying attention to her. Once inside her dwelling, the girl quickly undressed and threw dry clothes over her body, then laid down on the bed. Start dreaming about tomorrow's meeting. She had to think about absolutely everything, from her makeup to her dress to her perfume. When Scarlett had a clear picture of the meeting in her head, she calmed down and fell asleep. The next day came. Scarlett quickly got ready for the course, and so did her new buddy Harry. Already at 9:55, his car was parked outside the girl's house. When Scarlett noticed a familiar foreign car under the window, she immediately ran out to meet her happiness. That's how the romance between Scarlett and Harry spun. These two hearts were not only full of hope, but also eager to love. "In my life now, and neither does my mother." Scarlett almost fainted from what she heard. Only now she realized that the man would have known her suspicions. Surveillance just played along with her. The girls wanted to say that you unpleasant Harry in the wake, but she did not have time. The man seemed to vaporize in the air. Upset, Scarlett went home to think about what had happened. Meanwhile, there was a celebration at Harry's house. He had been dating a new girl named Ket for 2 weeks, and now he was completely free. His new date works as a model and looks accordingly. The skinny, tall blonde is so beautiful that she is noticed by all passersby as she walks under Harry's arm. Yes, she is beautiful, but she has a single menace. It is an unbearable character. Already in a week, the girl has worn out her mother-in-law. It was she who picked on her husband's mother. Allegedly, she does not dress like that, does not speak like that, and interferes with the relationship. An elderly woman named Hannah has already regretted 100 times that divorced Scarlett and Harry. In her mind, the thought came into her head that they should get back together again. A few weeks after the divorce, Scarlett realized that it was time to start a new relationship, especially since rumors about her husband's new novel spread in the circle of their mutual acquaintances quite quickly. The girl registered on several dating sites and now began to go to various courses, as well as trainings. The first time she got only perverts. She managed to see every kind of genitalia imaginable in a month. Slowly but surely, the girl began to slip into a pit of depression. But I was saved by a chance encounter. Scarlett ran into a young and handsome guy in a store. She was rushing to buy a bottle of wine before the supermarket closed when Matt crashed into her. Scarlett was surprised that the man who crashed into her immediately began to apologize and offered to pay for her purchases. And the girl decided not to refuse the offer, so a new man and a new romance appeared in the girl's life. Everything was fine for 2 whole months. Scarlett again gifted with gifts, then took to the sea. But the situation quickly changed for the worse when Matt began to behave strangely. The man became increasingly irritable, aggressive, but what happened did not tell. At first, Scarlett suspected that Matt had a mistress, but having followed him, the girl realized that she was wrong. And after a month of emotional swings, her new boyfriend said that he had problems with his business and urgently needed money or he would go to jail. Scarlett immediately understood everything, so right after Matt's words, she felt funny. She even laughed. The swindler looked at Scarlett without understanding until the girl began to yell. She kicked the man outside and threw his things out the window. Matt was madly upset that his scam had failed and he had wasted his money, so he decided to get revenge. The man began to stalk Scarlett. At first, he just wanted to follow her around. Then he scared off her new suitors by telling her that she was spreading chlamydia. Next, Matt took his stalking to a new level. He spray painted her car and eventually set fire to her apartment. The police were never able to catch him, but after setting the apartment on fire, he calmed down and disappeared. All this affected the psyche of the young and pleasant girl. She began to suffer from psychosis, neurosis, but moved in herself, found a new apartment and took ownership of it. However, after 2 weeks of living in a new studio, Scarlett realized that she needed help and decided to go to a psychiatric clinic. But she didn't expect she wouldn't want to be released from there. Meanwhile, Hannah's mother-in-law was also freaking out over her son's new fling. Ket was clearly psychotic. She had gotten into a fight with an elderly woman a couple of times, spent all of Harry's savings on beauty salons and cars, not to mention the drinking. The girl literally every day drank 5 bottles of champagne, but did so only when Harry fell asleep. Therefore, the man did not believe the words of his mother and began to ignore her. Hannah was determined to apologize to Scarlett, to try to set her son up with her again. But when she found out where the girl was, her heart was terrified. After 2 weeks of treatment, Scarlett called the doctor and asked to be discharged. But suddenly the man smiled sinisterly and replied, "No, you're here for the long haul." When the girl decided to run up to the doctor again and ask why she wasn't being discharged, I was immediately rounded up by the nurses and taken to a room. Despite the fact that Scarlett tried to break free and shouted that it was illegal because she herself applied, no one could not help the patient to escape. When the girl was brought to the room, she felt a slight jolt and fell on the bed. Before she could react, Scarlett felt herself being tied up and a needle being pushed under her skin. Her last thoughts before passing out were as follows: "Here I am. Now I can't escape from here." After Scarlett woke up, she felt wild weakness in her whole body. It was difficult for her to speak and move. But suddenly someone knocked in her room. The very doctor who didn't want to discharge her came in and said, "You can't hurt my friends. Matt sends his regards. Don't worry, we'll make a vegetable out of you and all your possessions will be ours." The man laughed, walked out and closed the door behind him. Scarlett closed her eyes. She wanted to scream, but she had no strength for it. The girl didn't know that help would come from the man who almost ruined her whole life. To be more precise, from her ex-husband's mother-in-law. She harassed the entire staff of the clinic. She managed to get the girl discharged. Fraudsters were afraid of the woman because they knew that her son is quite rich, will be able to quickly deal with them. So they decided to let Scarlett go. When Scarlett had already resigned herself to her fate, she silently drew various flowers and figures on the walls of the clinic, when suddenly there was another knock at the door. "Oh, the food has arrived," thought the girl. "He'll try to placate me again, so that I'll rewrite the apartment. Suddenly, the ward was rushed into by the frightened doctor who had been treating her all this time. He quickly rattled off the following: "We're giving you a discharge. Forget everything I said. You're free and someone's here for you." Here's your certificate and a change of clothes. Go now." Scarlett couldn't believe her joy. Quickly changing clothes and taking the certificate, the girl hurried to the exit. Quickly running outside, the brunette tried to catch her breath. It seemed to her that she had not been outside for 1,000 years. This was the taste of freedom, while Scarlett enjoyed the air and the birdsong. Hannah, sitting on a bench across the street from the mental institution, looked at her silently. Suddenly, Scarlett heard a voice. "How did you get in here? You didn't seem to want to be let out. I barely got you out. I'm going to need your help in return." Scarlett laughed as she realized it was her ex-husband's mother-in-law speaking. She turned to her and replied, "But who else could save me but my mother-in-law? But I'm glad you came for me anyway. I'm willing to help you. Tell me what you need to do." After saying that, Scarlett walked over to the bench and sat down next to the old woman. Her mother-in-law sighed quietly and continued talking. "It so happened that after breaking up with you, my son suddenly met a girl. Yes, she is beautiful, but she is crazy. Only after talking to her, I realized that you two were perfect for each other. I tried to divorce you for nothing. I told you about the apartment when I read the article about scammers. I saw that you were awake. I provoked your conflict on purpose. I'm sorry, I realized I was wrong. Kit is just a shark who won't let my son go until she takes all his money." Scarlett looked up at the sky and then back into her mother-in-law's eyes and replied, "I appreciate your help. I'll try to do what I can. But what makes you think he will forgive me and want to get back into a relationship? Even I don't know if I have feelings for him or if anything will work out for us." Hannah patted the young girl on the shoulder and whispered, "Whether you two get together or not, I think you'll succeed in scaring Kit away. Just give it a try." After this conversation, the mother-in-law and Scarlett went home. The young girl back home was happy, singing and dancing. She was free, and a little help from her mother-in-law was not such a serious price to pay for that freedom. After a few days, Scarlett realized that it was time to get in shape, so she made an appointment for a manicure, a hairdresser, changed her hair color to blonde, then went for a pedicure and eyelash extensions. At the end, she also got her lips a size up. Now she's ready to fight for Harry's heart, and even if she didn't get the man back, she could save the poor old woman from a real problem in the form of Kit. Kit felt that something big was brewing, so she stopped drinking, took care of herself again, even got a job at a massage parlor as a receptionist. She didn't work much, but she got a lot of money. Harry was happy with everything, but he felt empty. He felt like there was a puzzle missing from his life. It felt like Kit couldn't understand his soul, couldn't share his interests with him. The girl was completely ignorant of business, psychology, and sports. It was very frustrating. When Harry was completely sad, he remembered how good he was with Scarlett. They were always on the same page, until the girl began to suspect him of cheating. There was no way the men could forgive that and get over themselves. Once again, as Harry wondered about Scarlett, his phone rang. He saw that a familiar number was calling, but he couldn't remember where he had seen it, so he silently picked up the phone, waiting for the stranger to start talking. Scarlett's voice came over the line. She said the following: "Hi, recognize me?" The man smiled, pressed the receiver closer to his face, and thought, "How could I ever forget you?" But he answered in a different way. "Yes, I recognize you. What's up?" Scarlett was a little embarrassed, but she needed to help her mother-in-law, so she continued, "I'll tell you what happened. Come to our favorite art gallery tonight at 17 o'clock. Harry wanted to refuse, but the girl had already hung up. The man was interested in the strange behavior of his ex-wife, so he finished the business meeting and headed to the gallery. Arriving at the appointed time, he barely went inside. The line was huge. Harry thought to himself, "Strange, usually there are not many people here." But after much thought, the man reached one of his favorite paintings and stopped, starting to study it as if for the first time. Suddenly, a gentle hand touched his shoulder, and in a couple of seconds, Scarlett appeared before him. She looked completely different, and even her eyes had a special sparkle to them. Harry was confused and could only mumble, "Hi." Scarlett smiled, and noticing Harry's devouring gaze, realized that everything was going according to plan. Pausing briefly, the girl answered the man, "Hi, darling. You've stopped by your favorite painting of the forest as usual, but look over there." The girl pointed her finger to the middle of the hall. Harry opened his mouth in surprise as he turned and looked at the center of the hall. The man noticed that there was a picture hanging in the gallery showing the two of them in an embrace. Harry immediately asked Scarlet about the painting. "What is that even? Is that what you called me here for?" the man said uncomprehendingly. She smirked and replied, "I painted it when we were still married but did not want to show it to you. And when I showed it to the owner of the gallery, he was delighted and bought it. I didn't call you here for that. I just wanted to show you off. I've been chased by some real con artists, put in the loony bin, and they won't let me out. But I'll tell you about that later over coffee." "Okay." Harry nodded as he was dumbfounded by the incoming information, and after a couple minutes the pair headed to the cafe and discussed everything. After talking and saying goodbye, they went off in different directions, but their thoughts were on each other. Harry was horrified. His ex-wife was very badly hurt after the divorce, and at some point the man even felt sorry for his wife. But she also looked better, and his thoughts were floundering doubts. Whether to go to the former Scarlet, it is still absolutely pointless. And Scarlet thought only that she was glad to see her ex-husband, but I didn't want to go back to him. She had the thought rolling around in her head that it wasn't worth repeating old mistakes, and the only thing that made her act towards Harry was the promise. She felt that she owed a debt of gratitude to Hannah and owed it to her to help her. Ket, on the other hand, knew the man's schedule, so it made her angry that he didn't get home on time. She drove her wall BMW up to his work and spotted him heading to the gallery on foot. Further following, she saw him in an embrace with his ex-wife at a coffee shop and realized she wasn't giving the man up without a fight. A few days after meeting Harry, Scarlet was sleeping peacefully in her bed. What a delight it was for her to simply rest at home, for there were no orderlies or doctors here. Her sweet sleep was interrupted by a loud knock on the door. Scarlet jumped out of bed and ran to open the door. No one ever knocked on her door first thing in the morning. She figured something serious had happened. Opening the door, Scarlet saw a long, laid, angry model in front of her, and the first thing that came to her mind was to ask, "What are you doing here, girl?" Ket grinned and grabbed Scarlet by the hair. Rushing into the house, suddenly she said, "Leave my husband alone. I'm scared off more than that. My man is my man. You find yourself another." Scarlet smiled. After the clinic, she was not afraid of anything, and the only thing that went through the sleepy lady's head was that, yes, her mother-in-law was not lying. She has problems with her head, and judging by the smell of alcohol, slightly out of it, spruced up Ket and said, "I understand you're my ex-husband's new girlfriend." Ket grinned again and said, "You read that right." Scarlet smiled again and sweetly replied, "Don't worry, I don't need Harry." Ket couldn't get comfortable and continued, "Don't lie to me, knowing dumbasses like you try to jump on everyone." Scarlet walked into the house and silently closed the door in front of Harry's new girlfriend. She thought to herself, "Who's the dumbest of us all?" After Ket's antics, Scarlet decided to teach the girl a lesson and really try to get back in touch with Harry. She called the man and set up a meeting at a cafe, and he gladly agreed. All evening, Scarlet praised Harry, saying that no one better could not find, and moments even shamelessly flirted, touching his leg with hers. None of this helped, however. The man decided to be faithful to his new passport to the end. But Scarlet did not want to give up, decided to use a secret weapon. At one of the meetings, the girl put an aphrodisiac in his coffee. This changed the whole. All brain functions have been restored. The young man will only need to undergo a little physical therapy and he will be healthy again. Ket was the one who was most excited about this. The man was very surprised that the woman didn't run away and start a new life despite the disappointing diagnosis. Harry realized that he was obliged to marry the blue-eyed model, although his heart was still drawn to Scarlet, who, in his opinion, just ran away. He did not resent his mother. The man realized that the woman was depressed, so she didn't visit him. Negative thoughts evaporated after I saw the joyful mother in the hospital. She had lost 20 pounds and looked completely infirm. Harry was glad that he woke up, because now he would be able to put his mother's life in order and start a new life. After physiotherapy, the man was able to walk and run again as before, and in gratitude for the help, Harry donated most of his savings to the hospital. With the rest of the money, The man decided to celebrate his wedding with Ket. They had already chosen the date, the place, decided to invite only the closest people, but Harry's something stopped, and a couple of days later he found out what exactly will prevent his new marriage. Scarlett was pregnant, and according to the due date, only Harry could be the father. Since at the beginning of Jack's relationship, the girl did not want to come to intimacy immediately. Scarlett immediately called Harry to tell the truth and apologized in advance for disturbing him again. The man was slightly upset that he received this news exactly after the hospital, but still noted that he will communicate with the child and help him throughout his life. But the businessman did not want to get back together with Scarlett. Jack was disappointed in his relationship with Scarlett and decided that it was time for them to take a break for a month. He had to decide for himself whether he was ready to raise someone else's child. Scarlett, of course, this is for the case, but she did not give the appearance after all. The main thing is the baby. The girl has always dreamed of children and a full-fledged family. It's just that I never managed to meet the very prince. When Ket found out why the wedding was postponed for a month, she was furious, but then calmed down and said that she would still choose Harry, whatever it was. Harry was surprised at the bride's loyalty. Deep down, he knew she was perfect for him. All that was left was for him and his mom to be friends. Scarlett took a retest a month later, and it turned out she wasn't pregnant. The pharmacy where she bought the pregnancy detection device was having problems with the product. Management had to change suppliers. The tests from the new vendor were reliable, but most often didn't show the correct result until 2 hours later. Scarlett did not know about this, so she was sure that she was pregnant because she used about 3 tests. The girl was madly upset, but Jack immediately came back to her after the news and suggested having children. Harry's reaction was mixed. He felt both relief and pain at the same time. The man had already bought several strollers, began to look for a kindergarten for the baby, and here is such a thing. After that, Harry decided that they needed to get married as soon as possible. He moved the date of the wedding, and the young couple had to go through the procedure of signing of the marriage as soon as 3 days later. Ket was thrilled with the decision. She herself did not notice how she fell in love with Harry. Strangely enough, it was the incident from the hospital that awakened her sincere feelings for him. When the wedding day came, Ket picked out her best, a snow-white dress, and wore her favorite necklace. Harry threw on a white shirt, black pants, and also decided to buckle a gold Rolex back on his arm to add solidity to the look. As the couple walked out of the house under his arm, people passing by took notice of them. They looked insanely happy and so carefree. And now, having reached the registry office, the couple was waiting for the cherished questions. The registrar did not languish long, started the procedure of marriage registration, and then asked the bride, "Are you ready, Ket, to marry Harry?" The girl nodded happily, but when it was Harry's turn, Scarlett burst into the hall, who was all in tears. She begged not to marry Ket, to stay with her. Harry was furious. His feelings for Scarlett were indeed already past. He felt sorry for her, of course, but this act was crossing all boundaries. The man asked her to leave while she stayed, and so the men in front of her answered the questions of marriage by consent, and the young couple signed to shouts of hurrah. From the witnesses' side, the whistling of champagne corks and joyous laughter could be heard. Scarlett silently looked behind the happiness in Harry and Ket, and then, a little wrinkled, turned around and left. The next day, Ket woke up in the same bed as her husband and gently kissed his face as he slept. He woke up suddenly, pulled the girl to him and hugged her tightly, then whispered, "Why are you up so early?" Ket covered part of her face with the blanket and laughed, replying, "I don't even know. It makes me laugh so much remembering what our friends got us for our wedding yesterday." Suddenly, Harry laughed too and continued, "Yeah, Arson got us a scooter for the kids, but I don't know why." Ket rolled her eyes and said, "But he likes to joke. It's probably just another one of his jokes. But you know what I still don't understand is why Scarlett came to us. Why is she trying to stop you from being happy again? I'm surprised by the fact that she hasn't broken up with her new man yet, but she still came to stop us." Harry yanked his shoulders and thought for a moment before replying, "I don't even know. She's always been a little different. Maybe things aren't going so well in her relationships that she has to get involved in ours." Ket sighed and said, "I can still understand your mother. She's worried. But here's Scarlett just trying to ruin your life. Harry smiled and said, "Let's close this topic. I don't want to bring her up. We're already married. She can't stop us." Kit smiled back relaxedly and whispered, "Yes, honey, you're right." And after saying those words, the girl reached for Harry's lips and kissed him softly. In the meantime, Scarlett wasted no time. She got the number of her old acquaintance. After calling the man, Scarlett waited a long time for him to answer the phone. Suddenly, a familiar voice came on the line. "Hello, who is this?" Scarlett brought the receiver closer to her lips and whispered, "Hi, Matt. Do not recognize me. I will have to you one request and naturally paid." The man was frightened and wanted to hang up, but suddenly heard the following. "Don't you dare hang up. I know where you live, and if I find you, you are finished." Matt had nothing left but to agree to his ex-girlfriend's terms. According to Scarlett's plan, the man was to win Kit's heart, steal from her, and divorce her from her husband. But the main goal of Matt, as always, was money. The swindler already in 3 days arranged a chance meeting with Kit, turned to the massage parlor, in which the girl worked as an administrator, and after the massage paid and tried to get acquainted. "Thank you so much to your salon for the massage. It was wonderful and you look great, by the way. Don't come to meet me just for companionship. I've recently moved to your town and I'm getting lonely here." Kit smiled politely and replied, "Sorry, but my husband will be against such a friendly conversation. But our salon is always happy to see you as a client." After the dialogue with Kit, Matt realized that he would have to try harder to get closer to the girl. So he ordered massage services for 2 months in advance, and for each session, he started to come with a small gift for the receptionist. That's how the friendship between Kit and Matt began. When the month was up, the man had one last session left and one last attempt to divorce Kit. He tearfully begged the girl to go to a cafe once. Supposedly, it would be the last meeting between the client and the salon administrator. Kit reluctantly agreed. At the afternoon meeting at the cafe, she came to the establishment literally in her pajamas and without makeup, so that the man finally left her alone and really began to consider her as a friend. In 10 minutes after Kit's arrival, Matt himself appeared near the table. He sat down next to the girl, clearly proud of himself. He wore a plaid jacket, gray pants. From the outside, the couple looked funny. Matt was the first to start the dialogue. "You look so cute in those pajamas. What, you didn't get enough sleep tonight and decided to go out in your house clothes?" Kit nodded and replied, "Yes, I'm tired of dressing up at work. I want to be natural somehow." Matt smiled and continued talking. "You know, about you, so even more suits, so homely, cozy. Tell me, why did you get a job in a salon? It's obvious that you have money." Kit was surprised at the young man's insight, but still answered out of politeness, "Just unbearable to wait for my beloved husband from work alone in a huge house. So I got a job. I don't have many friends, and I don't go clubbing anymore. Sure, I have hobbies, but I can't do them 24/7s. Matt felt irritated. He couldn't get Kit to go out with him. She kept bringing up her husband. The man decided to refuse Scarlett's request, as nothing was working. Decided for himself that the salon and done. Matt smiled and abruptly said goodbye to the girl, running out of the cafe. Left to herself, Kit wondered, what was that? Why did he call me to the cafe if he ran away after 5 minutes? Well, maybe he'd let it go. Scarlett, on the other hand, was furious when she read Matt's message that he was giving up and wouldn't pursue Kit because it was useless. She really loves her husband. The girl realized that she would have to use Plan B to get Harry back, but this time she would have to risk everything to save their relationship. And Scarlett walked over to Jack, who was watching TV and drinking the beer, and then gently stroked his shoulder, starting a conversation. Honey, you know, I've been thinking about your proposal, but about an open relationship, and I've decided something. I know who I want you to be with. You remember Kat, my ex-husband's girlfriend. I think she likes you. I'm only letting you go out with her. After hearing this, Jack sobered up and looked at his girlfriend studyingly, and after a couple minutes he asked, Do you really think she likes me? Doubtful. Scarlett smiled, replied, I don't think so, I'm sure. Try flirting with her, asking her out on a date, and you'll see I was right. The man looked at Scarlett uncomprehendingly and asked, What's in it for you? Scarlett stroked Jack's head and continued, I just want to make sure I'm right. A few days later, Jack had already contacted Kit about a massage, and after the services had been rendered, Jack went to the front desk to settle up with the receptionist. Kit wasn't very happy to see Scarlett's current young man, but you had to smile at work. Jack was the first to start the conversation. "Hello, gorgeous. And you work in a very posh salon. Don't you get bored with that job? Maybe you should find a man who forbids himself to work." Kit was already tired of the nightmarish pickups from men over the last month and replied coldly, "Pay up, please, and you can go." Jack realized that he was right about Kit, quickly paid for the massage, and flew out of the establishment. After this incident, Kit began to suspect that Scarlett was the one sending men to her, but she had no proof. Despite the lack of facts about the body, girl decided to complain to her husband. After another shift, Kit rejoiced. Harry was already at home in the kitchen taking apart the refrigerator. The girl ran up to the man from the back and hugged him tightly. Harry smiled, turned around to his wife, and kissed her tenderly. After the kiss, the man started a conversation. "Hi, love, you're so late today. Are you okay?" Kit rolled her eyes and replied, "But how can I tell you I'm tired of the extra attention from strangers? I'm afraid it's your ex-girlfriend who's organizing all this attention. I'd had enough of her. I know it all sounds paranoid, but if there's a way to get rid of her." Harry smiled as he continued to rummage through the fridge and humorously replied to his wife, "But probably only by killing her." Kit smiled imperceptibly, and the healthy glint in her eyes was hidden from the man. 3 months passed. Kit and Harry began to live soul to soul, especially after the girl quit her job. Tyne has already begun to plan children, a joint move to another country, as suddenly there was an emergency. On one of the weekdays, Harry came home and all on edge and began to run from corner to corner. Kit was frightened and asked, "Honey, what's wrong? Why are you so early?" Harry moved closer to his wife and took her hands in his, answering, "I've got some serious problems at work. A massive audit from the IRS is coming up soon. I need you to get out of town for a while, maybe even the country. We just recently been thinking about moving, and this is the perfect opportunity." Kit sighed excitedly and asked, "Beloved, but you realize that moving usually takes a long time. No one just takes off. It's mind-boggling. This is our home here." Harry smiled nervously and continued, "If you want to be with me, you'll go. And you'll also have to change your papers to a different last name, first name, middle name. That you, that I. That's something I'll take care of on my own." Kit nodded and hugged her husband, but then one devious plan popped into her head. Now that could be easily organized. Meanwhile, Scarlett's separated Jack lived alone. The girl learned to enjoy silence, peace. In the evening, Scarlett dreamed of Harry's return. As before, on one of the weekdays, the girl was going to the fitness room. Quickly jumped out of the house, approaching Scarlett's institution, and did not notice the car. And there was an accident. Passersby heard screams and the sound of falling. The car fled, and the girl lay bleeding in the street. The ambulance arrived in time, as passersby saw Scarlett 5 minutes after the hit and run, but it was too late to save her. Upon learning of Scarlett's death, almost all of her former men were upset. Even Matt was horrified. Jack had been organizing everything for the girl's repose. Harry had transferred $500,000 to Jack's account to help, one thing Kit didn't care about. But a week after the accident, the girl came to her husband and said, Darling, I think it's time for us to leave. You yourself wanted and hurried, so I'm ready now, even packed my bags." Harry was surprised, but replied as follows, "I'd already made the documents. We'll fly out tomorrow since you asked." The next day, the family went to the airport. During the check-in, Kit was very happy and smiling, which surprised Harry very much. He was loaded with things to do, but his wife's smile caused mixed feelings. The man was glad that the girl chose him again, despite the difficulties. But her joy after his ex-wife's death was a little frightening. Perhaps that wasn't what she was rejoicing about at all. Harry's thoughts were interrupted by the registrar who asked for his passport. Stepping onto the plane, the couple exhaled in relief and took a seat in first class. Kit sat closer to the window, ordered a glass of champagne, and when the drink was brought to her, she happily sipped from the glass. Harry rolled his eyes, continuing to fill out work reports in his clipboard. Suddenly, the plane finally took off. The girl was telling her husband all the time of the flight how good it would be for them to live on a tropical island and that now a new life was waiting for them, which would be filled with positive adventures. Harry mentally immersed himself in his dreams about how he would be lounging on the ocean. At this time, the police found a surveillance tape outside Scarlett's house. The video clearly captured the face of the driver who hit the girl. Scarlett was hit by a tall blonde woman wearing glasses, sitting behind the wheel of a BMW. No identity could be established, but the police officers put up an orientation sign. Upon seeing the orientation, Jack clutched at his heart. After looking at the photo, the man immediately realized that it was Ket who had hit his favorite girl. Trying to call Harry, he was redirected to an answering machine. The man then tried to locate Ket and Harry through the police, but all was to no avail. It was as if they had disappeared without a trace. 20 hours later, the plane successfully landed in Fiji. The couple Harry and Ket happily ran out of the airport, and now they were starting a new chapter in their lives. In a month, Harry and Ket have managed to settle down on the island. The man bought several types of real estate, a regular house for living and a bungalow for fun vacations. The couple would come to relax in the bungalow when they were bored. Ket quickly made friends with all the staff at the beachfront, at the bar, as did her husband. Here they made many more friends than before, and they didn't want to fly away anymore. Harry and Ket's relationship was developing beautifully. They fed each other coconuts in the morning, then went on paid fishing trips. In the evening they could laze in the ocean. But after the news, their relationship changed. 3 months later, Ket took tests, realized she was pregnant and couldn't decide how best to tell her husband. To give birth on the island, this is not the best idea, because there are few qualified doctors. But the girl did not want to leave. In the evening, when her husband came from another party on the island, Ket pulled him to her and hugged him gently. Harry suspected something wrong. His beloved wife hadn't been out with him in 3 days. She'd stopped drinking alcohol, and now all sorts of tenderness was coming out of her. The man looked carefully into the eyes of his beloved and asked, "Honey, and you are all right. You behaved strangely lately. Do not go out, do not drink, climbing to hug every 2 minutes." Ket sighed and tearfully replied, "Honey, I think I'm pregnant." Harry felt as if someone had hit him over the head with a shoe. He rejoiced, but what to do in this situation? He did not know men did not deal with the business, his feelings and rest, and here in the baby. But to show true emotions, his favorite places, they simply replied, "Beloved, I am very happy. We will now be a happy, complete family." After the man finished speaking, gently stroked Ket's face and kissed her on the lips. It was after this that Ket and Harry's relationship staggered. The girl could no longer relax with the man at parties and became a homebody. She constantly disliked something, then from food, then from things. The man was tired of his wife. His heart wanted to rest. He had already worked all his life. He did not want to get another job, but he already saw a dissatisfied spouse. That's why Harry disappeared every night in the bar. The girl came from America, but knew almost all languages well. Beth worked for a long-time linguisto, but she quickly got bored with it, so she decided to move to Fiji. It was on the island that she found her home. She also had a second education. The girl took courses in medical assistance, even worked part-time in the hospital on the island. At one time, Quinny was a lighter, always cheerful, carefree, no problems, no concerns about money or intimate life, even though she was of the African-American race. Her skin was quite fair. Beth took an immediate liking to Harry. He spoke fluent English and taught her some Russian words. In the evenings, they laughed until they were blue in the face, especially over pronunciation. Harry did notice how he began to feel sympathy for the young and active barmaid on the island. Perhaps it was all because he could rest his soul with her, ride the scent, drink a delicious cocktail, and then also have a heart-to-heart conversation. With Ket, unfortunately, he had few topics of conversation, but he loved her. After 4 months of being so close, he realized he was ready to leave Ket for Beth, especially after the holidays Friday. It was the day everyone on the island gathered, celebrating another party. This time, however, there was no way Harry could find Beth. After half an hour of searching, he noticed a girl on the shore who was sitting alone and throwing her pebbles into the water. Coming closer to the girl, The man sat down next to her and started a dialogue. "Hi, something happened. Why are you alone and not having fun? Tell me everything. You know you can trust me." Beth tried to hide the sadness. Her eyes turned to Harry and answered, "I've lived here for a long time now, and in that time I've never had a relationship. I'm tired of being alone, and the only man I've liked here turned out to be married, so I'm in no mood to party." Harry realized the girl was talking about him and his heart beat twice as fast. The man had hoped for reciprocity from Beth, but it was only hopes, and now his dreams were slowly turning into reality. So Harry gently looked into Beth's eyes and said, "You're not alone. I'm here for you." After these words, the man put his hand on the girl's arm and then quickly reached for the young beauty's lips and pulled her into a kiss. Suddenly, screams were heard somewhere nearby. "Harry, where are you?" The couple broke off the kiss. The man broke away and ran off, and Beth was left sitting alone. She put her fingers to her lips, still feeling the pleasant kiss left by Harry. She smiled silently and began drawing hearts in the sand. Harry ran up to his startled wife and touched her shoulder. She turned around sharply and saw her husband. Relieved, she exhaled, then hugged him tightly and started talking. "Where did you disappear from the party? I'm here all alone and without you. I'm about to give birth and you're leaving me alone." Harry felt his conscience waking up, starting to gnaw at him from the inside out. The man stroked his wife's shoulders and led her into the house. As they entered the cabin and closed the door behind them, Harry began his monologue. "Beloved, please forgive me, but I have forsaken you. I won't do that to you again." Having finished his speech, the man suddenly fell into the lips of his wife with a passionate kiss and fell on the bed. The girl did not resist and gave in to the desire of her lover. After this incident, Harry began to avoid Beth, as he realized that he loved sticking to a formal level of communication. A month later, the day of labor came. Kit went to the maternity hospital on the island. At first, all was well, but in the midst of labor, Kit lost consciousness. Harry was terrified. He ran around the room like a scalded man, and then he called Beth. "I know I've done a bad thing to you. I need help. Come to the hospital right away. Something's happened to Kit." 15 minutes later, Beth was already there, running up to an agitated Harry. He didn't even have time to explain before she rushed over to hug him. The man did his best to overpower her from himself and explain what was going on. Beth didn't call for the nurses. She grabbed a couple of instruments and began to examine her health. Suddenly, the barmaid turned to Harry and said, "Give me consent for the procedure. She will have to have a pleural puncture or she will suffocate and die, and the baby after her." The man consented, feeling his heart clench. Beth surprisingly did everything quickly and without mistakes. Within a couple minutes, Ket had already opened her eyes and was breathing deeply. Suddenly, everyone started clapping for Beth. Ket realized that the man clearly had some feelings for the bar employee. They had been acting too strangely lately, then chatting all day, then avoiding each other. And when she'd gotten sick, the first person he called was Beth. Her thoughts were interrupted by renewed contractions. The girl was wheeled away on a gurney for a successful labor. Beth returned with the medical staff to another room, and Harry was left alone. The labor was successful, and a little boy was born. Ket decided to name him Enrique, after her favorite singer. She decided not to ask her husband, as she realized that their marriage was coming to an end. Harry was overjoyed that he now had a son. He began to spend most of his time with the child, regularly ignoring all the girls on the island, including his wife. All the man's money went on food, clothes, books for the child. But his happy, carefree period was interrupted by a call on his cell phone. It was from Manchester. At first, Harry was frightened that the call was about work, but then he pulled himself together and picked up the phone. There was a man's voice on the other end of the line. "Good afternoon. Are you Harry?" Harry sighed and answered, "Yes, it's me. What's wrong?" The police officers continued talking. "We found the killer of your ex-wife, Scarlett. And how can I put this to you? The owner of the car that hit the girl, Ket." Harry felt dizzy and cornered. He couldn't believe what was happening. "Step away from the child." The man replied, "Thank you for letting me know. Goodbye." After saying that, Harry hung up and disconnected the phone. He didn't even feel like telling the police whether he knew where his wife was or not. First of all, he hoped to discuss everything with his spouse. 15 minutes later, Ket came in from the vegetable market, started laying out her purchases. Suddenly, the girl noticed her husband's stare, so she turned around and asked, "Hi, something is wrong. Why so much attention to me? You usually only sit with Enrique." The man looked angrily at Ket and answered with a counter question. "Answer me honestly, you're the one who hit Scarlett." Ket felt her hands shake and her blood pressure jump up, but she answered, "Yes, I did. She was messing up my life, sending men my way. I just wanted her to break her leg and leave us alone. I didn't expect her to die from a light impact with the car. I didn't calculate the speed, I don't know." Harry sighed and continued the conversation. "You do realize that the police already know it's you, that you can't go back to Manchester. What have you done? You killed a man." Before Harry could continue, Ket had passed out again. When the man realized that the girl was not regaining consciousness, he urgently summoned doctors he called. After Ket was taken to the hospital, no one said anything to the man, but 2 hours later the doctor came out upset. Harry felt the nausea of excitement coming up his throat and mumbled, "There's nothing wrong with her. She'll live." "What's wrong?" The doctor sighed and replied, "She will live for now, but a vessel in her brain has not burst. We don't know if she will wake up. To be honest, your wife seems to have been very nervous. Her blood pressure spiked to critical levels." Harry sat down on the first chair he could find and realized that he was to blame for what had happened to his wife. And this time the man didn't know what to do next. Suddenly Beth ran out of the restroom and sat down next to Harry, grabbing his hand. After a moment, the barmaid asked, "What did the doctor say? What happened?" Harry cried, whispering quietly in response, "There's a chance she'll never wake up again. I will raise my son alone." A few months later, the man more or less came to his senses. Ket never woke up. Her life kept alive by the hospital equipment, and Beth began to get close to Harry again, and eventually they started dating. The girl began to help care for the child to her lover, and 6 months later Enrique called Beth mom. Harry began to feel happy in the relationship because he found the girl he was looking for. But the guilt he felt for his wife kept the pain at bay. The hospital gave Harry a 2-month deadline. If Ket did not wake up, she would have to be disconnected from the machines that artificially kept her alive. The transportation the girl would not survive, so the young man had to agree. When before disconnecting Ket from the machines was a week, Harry came to the hospital, went into the room to his wife and sat down beside her. After sitting in silence for 15 minutes, he began a monologue. "I'm going to have to let you go, darling. I really loved you and am very grateful for your son. But the hospital leaves me no choice. I'll have to sign an agreement to disconnect you from the equipment. I don't want to, I don't want to let you go really, but I have to." The man pressed his wife's hand to his heart and continued, "You understand me." Suddenly, tears ran down Harry's cheeks and he covered his eyes, trying to enjoy the silence alone with himself. Suddenly, after a minute, all the sensors beeped. The man opened his eyes sharply and started calling for the doctors. Lucky for him, the medical staff immediately came running to the shout and kicked Harry out of the room. While the man sat in the waiting room wondering what was going on, Ket opened her eyes. When one of the doctors came out of the room, Harry immediately rushed over to him, starting a conversation. "What happened?" She felt sick. "Don't be silent." The doctor smiled happily and patted Harry on the shoulder, replying, "No, a miracle happened. Your wife woke up and she is perfectly healthy." Hearing those words, Harry felt dizzy, leaned against the nearest wall, and began to climb down. After a couple minutes, he was brought to his senses by the nurses led by the doctor with the help of ammonia. When Harry was fully sane, the doctor continued the conversation. "You may come into the room and chat with your wife." Harry felt a panic attack choking him. He didn't know how to tell his wife that he had been seeing someone else for a long time. He was already sure she was going to die. Overcoming his fear, the man stormed into the room and sat down next to Ket. He begins a dialogue. "Oh my God, you're really awake. How do you feel? Have you been told how long it's been?" Ket innocently flapped her eyes and replied, "Who are you?" Harry clutched his heart and continued to question his wife. "Don't you remember me?" Suddenly Ket laughed and said, "Of course I remember. I thought I was joking." Harry breathed a sigh of relief and continued, "You do realize you've been here for over 6 months. I mean, I only passed out yesterday." No. God, how's my baby? I need to get home now. Harry sat down closer to his wife and stroked her knees before replying. No, you should stay here for at least another week, get some observation, and then go home. Ket nodded silently and asked him to buy her an ice cream. The man ran to a nearby store and brought her a treat, which she happily devoured. After half a day at the hospital, Harry realized it was time to go home, especially since Beth was calling every 5 minutes, not understanding why the man hadn't returned yet. Harry didn't know what to say to his mistress yet, since his wife had woken up alive and while the man walked to his house. He was contemplating a plan of action. Harry decided to break up with his mistress for a while, as it was necessary to support Ket while she was his once. And once she felt better, it would be possible to part with her. All that remained was to explain it all to Beth and explain it in such a way that she would not take offense. Walking home, the man quickly threw off his shirt and changed his clothes. Beth saw Harry. She was excited. She ran up to him and started asking him how the day had gone, if he had been able to get his wife off the machines. The man pulled away from the barmaid a little and replied, I have something to tell you, but I don't even know how to find the words. Let me start by saying that Ket is awake and she's fine. There's no need to disconnect her from the equipment anymore, and you and I are going to have to pause and hopefully you'll understand. She won't survive it if she finds out that I've been with you all this time, that I'm the son calling you mom. I owe her a debt of gratitude. When I was in the hospital too, Ket was with me to the end, not like me. Beth was furious, but realized that breaking up with Harry was the best solution. With tears in her eyes, the girl said goodbye to the child and silently slammed the door behind her, heading for her bungalow. Harry was madly tempted to stop his mistress. After 5 minutes, he decided to run after her, but suddenly he heard a rumbling noise near the door. And going to the door and opening it, the man saw Ket and then froze. And a second later, he almost broke into a scream. What are you doing here? You're supposed to be in the hospital. You're out of your mind. You ripped out all the IVs and catheters and then ran home. Ket smiled proudly, shoved her husband off and walked into the house, then answered, Yes. She then took a deep breath and continued the dialogue. You don't understand. You haven't been in the hospital for almost a year. The food there is terrible. I'm all alone there. I don't know how my baby is doing. Harry grabbed his head with his hands and said, You do realize that you walked from the hospitals to home in a hospital gown and everyone saw it. Ket looked at her husband in bewilderment and grinned. So what? What's the fashion statement here? Harry was starting to boil and continued. But it's short. You were walking practically naked. It was Ket's turn to grab her head, but after a second the girl calmed down and said, Don't get on my nerves. After the hospital I was running around here in a swimsuit. Hospital robot is still bullshit. After these words, the girl ran up to Enrique and tried to take him in her arms, but she was surprised by the fact that the baby squealed with fear. The girl put the baby back and said sadly, He won't recognize me. Harry calmed down and walked over to his wife. Stroking her back, he whispered in her ear, Don't worry, he will still remember you. Enrique will be happy now that his parents are alive beside him. Ket smiled happily and went to change. After Harry's wife had left, the man sank back into his thoughts. He was completely confused about who he wanted to be with and build a relationship with. But the one thing that was clear was that he didn't want to leave Ket in a difficult position. For the next month, Ket recovered, went for regular checkups, and the baby got used to her. But she was surprised he didn't call her mommy. The most she could get out of Enrique was auntie. She became annoyed by this fact, but she tried to direct all her energy to restore relations with her husband. And one evening she began a conversation with Harry as they lay on the bed together. Beloved, you can tell me everything. You, as a healthy man, may well have found yourself some girl while I was unconscious. If anything, I forgive you. But I'm alive and well now, so it won't happen again. Harry doomed and sighed, but decided not to share the details of his new life with his wife. So he replied, Yes, there were some things, but I wouldn't have been able to leave you for a fling. I'm glad you understand. Ket looked at her husband irritably and said, Yes, I understand everything, but we won't talk about it anymore. Let's better forget it. The man nodded and replied, Let's. Ket's relationship with Harry started to recover, but the girl was tense. Beth, who had seen them together every time, washed with burning hatred. Fears of an affair with the barmaid were confirmed when she walked with the baby around the island. Beth walked to the stroller and waved Enrique greetings to him. Kit certainly didn't like the bar employee, but it would have been rude to turn her away from the baby. Suddenly, Enrique smiled, looked at Beth and said, "Mommy." Reaching out to the dark-skinned girl, Kat immediately understood and said loudly to her child, "No, baby, that's not your mommy. That's your daddy's girlfriend. The real mom, that's me." The girl then grabbed the stroller and went home to get her daddy. Beth could barely contain her laughter and went to relax on the beach. When she got home, Kit put the baby down and called one of the neighborhood kids so someone could watch Enrique. Then she took Harry by the hand and offered him a walk. The unsuspecting child happily agreed. Kit led Harry to the end of the beaches, starting a conversation. "Something happened here. I was out with the baby this afternoon, and Enrique called Beth mommy. How do you explain that?" The man was startled and hesitated, but then continued. "I wanted to tell you right away that she and I lived together during your illness, but I was afraid you would take it the wrong way and get nervous. I thought it would be better to tell you later." Kat raised her hands in irritation and asked, "So you really think it's easier for me to process this kind of information now? That's seriously what you're saying?" Harry lifted his shoulders and wanted to answer. Suddenly, Kit passed out again and fell right into her husband's arms. The walk home and the hospital were still dozens of kilometers away. Harry realized he was trapped. He grabbed Kit's body and dragged it to the water. As the waves approached, he whipped the girl's face and slapped his wet palms on the crate. Then the man remembered the first aid video and started performing CPR on his wife. After a couple minutes, she woke up and saw Harry trying to save her. She slowly stopped his hands and said, "Calm down. I'm alive, just overexcited. Also, I've been out in the sun so much without a hat. So much for sunstroke. Thanks for getting me wet, but you're not much of a lifeguard. Next time, please don't try to save me. I'm afraid you'll kill me." At the last words, the girl laughed. Harry looked at Kit seriously. He lifted her from the ground, took her in his arms, and carried her home. 2 hours later, the couple was already back home. Kit was full of strength and energy, and Harry could hardly move, for he had spent 2 hours acting like a hero and carrying his wife so that she would forgive him. The trick seemed to work, but the man realized he was about to pass out because of fatigue. But it didn't take long for Kit to forgive her husband. At every quarrel, she recalled Harry's affair with Beth, and one day their quarrel came to a climax. "I started it, Harry," Kit finished. "That's it, I'm done. I can't be with you anymore. I've always been faithful to you. When hundreds of other men came up to me, when you went into a coma, once you went out of business and you ran off to someone else at the first problem. Well, now it's my turn to run. I'm taking Enrique and going back to Manchester." At first, Harry was angry. Then he asked his wife, "You've forgotten that you're wanted for murder there. How are you going to go back there? You'll be hiding with fake documents, but sooner or later one of your old acquaintances will see you on the street." Kit thought for a moment and then answered, "But you're my husband and the father of my child, so solve the problem." Harry was surprised again and asked, "Why should I help you?" Kit grinned and replied, "Because otherwise I'll take your baby and go to another country and you'll never see him again." Harry gave in and agreed to Kit's terms. He handed the police officers mad money through acquaintances to close the case. All that remained was to settle the case with Jack. But he immediately told his wife that she would deal with it when she arrived and they would fly to Manchester together. He, one way or another, needed to check on his company. A week after the case was closed, Kit bought tickets to Manchester. The day of the flight came. Gathering Kit, Harry, and Enrique headed to the airport. When the girl along with the child went to eat at a cafe inside the building, Harry sat and played on his tablet. Suddenly, Beth ran up to him and fell to her knees in front of him. "I'm begging you, don't fly away. I know you love me. You've never been happier. I saw your eyes when we were together. You didn't want anyone else." The man, regret in his eyes, looked at the dark-haired girl and replied, "I'm sorry, but I can't stay. Do you understand?" Beth interrupted him and replied, "You can't stay because I'm not as rich as you are. That's why you got together with Ket and couldn't get a divorce. It's hard for you to date a girl who isn't from a rich family, so you're leaving me." The man shook his head negatively and said, "No, it's not that. I'm flying there to take care of the business and watch the baby. I didn't divorce my wife because of Enrique. This has nothing to do with money. I like you, but I can't stay on the island right now, and I don't think I want to. If you really want to be with me, you can fly to me in a week. I'll buy you tickets." Without thinking long, Beth smiled with tears in her eyes and kissed Harry on the lips. "Okay, I'll fly to you in a week. I'll see you soon." Suddenly, the girl got up from her knee and hurried to hide. At this moment, Ket was already approaching with her son Strava to her husband. "What a passionate relationship. Good thing I don't love you anymore and we'll divorce soon." Coming closer, she said this. The man felt his heart ache after saying, "I don't love you." She had never said that before. It wasn't pleasant, so the man only nodded silently, then said, "Our plane has already been announced. We can go to check in and then board. Onward to our new life." Ket smiled happily and exclaimed, "Go," making Enrique smile as well. 24 hours later, the couple was already in Manchester. Enrique looked around in wonder, from the airport to the local geography. The boy was born on the island, and it was obvious that everything was new and unexplored for him in the urban environment. Ket headed straight home with the baby, while Harry went to the company to rearrange the paperwork. The first week in Manchester went well. Ket and Harry had time to file for divorce and set up a visitation schedule for the baby. But on one of their walks with Enrique, the unforeseen happened. Ket, as usual, was walking in the yard, but suddenly noticed that a bearded man was walking towards her. At first, the girl did not recognize him, but when he came closer, she realized that it was Jack. The man was furious and immediately started talking. "But there you are, little birdie. Where did you disappear to, and how did you manage to close the case with ironclad evidence of how you could have killed her?" The girl shrugged and replied, "You mean what evidence? About the videotape that was lost? I did not disappear. I lived on the island, and by the way, do not interfere with the walk with my child." Suddenly, Jack noticed the stroller with the baby and was surprised, but continued his tirade. "No, I won't just let you go. I won't forgive you for this act." Kit sighed and replied sadly, "I realize you're angry right now, but I've already regretted a lot of things about myself too. I hope you realize that Scarlett didn't love you. She was just using you for her own ends. That's exactly what Harry did to me, by the way. The only thing I'm grateful to him for is my miracle baby." For a second, the man even felt sorry for him, which is why he backed off. For 2 months, however, Jack made himself known and then disappeared again. In the meantime, Harry's relationship with Beth was going well. They spent all day taking baths, playing strike ball, and hanging out at clubs. But then one fine morning, the man got up and saw a sad Beth leaning on the couch and holding something in her hands. Harry yawned and asked, "Baby, what are you doing up 5 in the morning? Is something wrong?" Beth sighed and turned to Harry and then said, "Honey, I'm pregnant. You're going to be a daddy. I know we didn't plan this, but at least now we can get married." Harry felt the irritation inside him, just looking for a way out. He smiled sweetly and said, "Awesome. Great news. I'm going to run to the bathroom for a second, love. I've got a stomachache." Reaching the bathtub, combined with the toilet, the man went inside and closed the door behind him, then turned on the water. Rinsing his face, Harry looked in the mirror, then said to himself, "Again, but holy shit, I don't want to be a father again. I'd had enough of one child when I can rest and relax already. Why is everyone so hard on relationships?" After a short thought, the man turned off the water, opened the doors, went on to play the role of the happy daddy. 2 weeks after this news, Ket and Harry were finally divorced. When they walked out of the courtroom, they were insanely happy. There wasn't much to share except the baby, but even Enrique had been agreed upon. Suddenly, Harry stopped the girl, who was intending to go home to the baby, and said, "Let's have a coffee or something to say goodbye." Ket reluctantly agreed to her ex-husband's proposal and sat at the table with him for half an hour singing coffee. The girl looked at Harry and remembered how well everything had started and how it had ended. This man was not to be trusted. After saying goodbye to her ex-husband, Ket paid for herself and removed herself. Ket began to bond closer with Jack, and at some point the man realized he loved her, And the girl agreed to a relationship with Scarlett's ex, as he really was a lot like Harry when Kit was alone with him, and it seemed like she was going back to her happy relationship. Surprisingly, even the baby was confusing Daddy with Jack. But the tranquility in Kit and Jack's relationship didn't last long. The girl began to have postpartum depression. She was constantly tormented by thoughts that the marriage could still be saved, and at some point Kit's depression reached the peak. Jack came home from work and saw his beloved standing on the windowsill, wanting to jump out of the window. He ran toward her, but was stopped by a woman's scream. "Stay back, I'm going to jump, you hear?" Jack looked sympathetically at Kit and said, "Why would you jump? My love, you have a beautiful son. You have me and your property, lots of money, free from everything. Why would you do that?" Jack's words brought the girl back to reality, but depression continued to speak for her. "How? Why? What the hell do you need me? A child like that? Even Harry couldn't stand it and dumped me." Jack sighed irritably, but then calmed down and continued to comfort his fiancée. "I don't know what happened between you and Harry there, but you're a marvel. You remember how many men wanted to get themselves, how much you loved yourself before, but the time you left with him for the island. You remember you're a sought-after model, a great mom. I realize that he humiliated you a lot, but it's time for you to wake up." Suddenly, something clicked in Kit's soul and she wanted to climb down from the window, but she slipped and flew down. The girl was lucky that Jack managed to grab her leg in time. To reassure himself and the girl, Jack said, "Don't worry, I'll lift you back up now and you'll be fine." Kit became desperate again and said, "No, you better let me go. It will be better for you and Enrique that way. You'll be better off without me." Jack did not even listen to the depressive ravings of his beloved and slowly lifted the girl and with her fell to the floor. The girl found herself sitting on top of Jack. He laughed, ran his hand over her face and said, "I'm not letting you go anywhere ever. You're going to be okay now." Saying the last words, the man hugged her tightly and heard Kit crying with joy. The following months, the girl was treated for depression, but she had periodic breakdowns, especially after the news of the pregnancy and the imminent birth of Harry's new girlfriend. Kit was afraid that the man cared about his child and the conception of the second, but it was not so. Meanwhile, Harry constantly avoided socializing with Beth. Once she started gaining weight, he realized he didn't want to be with her anymore. The man started racing around bars and partying with young college girls again. He wanted the taste of life again, but Beth understood. She cried every day when Harry left. The girl had wanted to leave him for a long time, but she had nowhere to go. Here she had no money, no job, no friends. When Kit almost completely overcame postpartum depression, had a strange but pleasant dream, Scarlett appeared to her and said the following: "I forgive you, but it's a struggle for Harry. It wasn't worth it. You may not realize it now, but he'll use Beth too and throw her away like a toy, just like he did to you and me. You agonize with depression, thinking that if you could change things, then he could stay with you. But the point is, people like him don't change. He likes to sleep with everyone and there's nothing you can do about it. Pretty soon you'll see how he doesn't need Beth." And all she had time to do was respond, "Thank you for everything. I agree with you about Harry." After the words spoken by Scarlett, the dream ended. When she woke up, the girl was very surprised that she had dreamed about Scarlett. She felt ashamed of all of her actions, but there was nothing she could do about it. Kit remembered how well she had lived on the island. Manchester choked her and reminded her of the past. The young mother decided to return there with her child, but she couldn't figure out how to convince Jack to move. She also had a question swirling around in her head. What should she do there? Who should she work for? But the girl had no idea that the answers to her questions would surface soon. Suddenly, Jack came home early from work and started complaining to Kit about life. He said that he was tired of working for a large company as a plumber. Most of his salary had to be given to the organization for finding clients, and the work here was monotonous. Kit felt a crazy joy. Her eyes lit up. Jack didn't understand why she was happy and asked, "I'm complaining to you here and you're smiling. I'm certainly glad you've gotten over your depression, but can you explain what's wrong?" Kit ran her hand through Jack's hair and mussed it, then answered, "I want to go back to Fiji, but with you and Enrique together. There is a lot of interesting work for you there. Plumbers are always needed there. There are few of them. At the very least, I have already found a job on the island for you." Jack was very surprised and said, "Wow, that's fast. And to ask me, in case I don't agree." Ket laughed and replied, "I can see in your eyes that you agree." After Ket had finished talking, the man pulled her to him and kissed her, followed by whispering, "I have the best you." Meanwhile, Beth had given birth to a baby, a girl, but Harry didn't even bother to come to the maternity ward to check on the baby girl and see how she was doing. A week later, Beth came home with the baby and found a drunken Harry in bed with a new woman. Blonde again, but this time brown-eyed and plump. It was obvious that the men had had too much to drink and didn't even remember falling asleep with anyone. At first, Harry tried to justify himself, but then he said the following: "You see, I didn't want a second child. I didn't want to upset you. I was just thinking about having fun. But you and Ket made me live by some made-up rules. Do you have any idea what it's like for a party boy to live with a non-drinking woman for 9 months who's not gonna sleep with him? I can't take it anymore. I'm gonna leave you this house, sign it over to you. I'm doing this for the baby, so she'll have a place to live. If you need money, I'll send it, of course, but we won't be together." Beth didn't notice the tears rolling down her cheeks. Silently wiping them away, the girl answered Harry, "Couldn't you have said that before I moved to Manchester? I gave up everything for you, my friends, my job, my home. You left me here alone and with a baby in my arms. Well, at least you're home, so I can have some kind of a life here. Pack your things and go. I don't want to see you here anymore. If you don't want to be a part of your daughter's life, I'll take it. Just go." Harry smiled evilly and went to pack his things. A few hours later, the man packed everything he needed, called the Thunder car for transportation, and without saying goodbye, slammed the doors. As he left Beth's side and put a hand to her face, whispering, "Just like a girl, I wish he'd throw a tantrum." At first, Beth had a good life. She rented out half the house and lived with her child in the other half. But gradually, the girl began to get depressed. She wanted to go home to the island. Here, she could not make friends. She was all alone, and the huge house only pointed to her mental loneliness. Then Beth started drinking and periodically quit because she felt sorry for the baby. That's how her life went until she found out that Ket was going back to the island. She found out about it by accident. They ran into a girl in a supermarket. Ket started the first conversation. "How's Harry doing? I hope he's happy." Beth rolled her eyes and upset, she replied. "He betrayed and abandoned me like he did you. I should have known he would do the same to me. But I can't stand living in Manchester anymore. I have no friends here. I regretted moving here a long time ago. My only joy is my daughter Lou." Ket looked sympathetically at the girl and replied, "I've decided to move back to the island. We finally sold all the real estate with Jack and are moving with the baby soon. I'm sick of living in Manchester too." Ket wanted to say goodbye to Beth, but suddenly she remembered the dream with Scarlett, realized that she needed to help her to correct her past mistakes, so she continued the conversation. "You know, you can come to the island with us if you want. Harry must have left you some money. We'll help you out for the first while, and you can go home and find your happiness again." Beth was madly pleased that Ket had offered to help, despite the shared past, and replied, "I don't have any money, but I have a house. I could sell it and have enough money to pay for everything. But I really don't know any good lawyers or realtors here." Suddenly, Ket's eyes lit up with happiness. She said, "Great, I'll help you sell your house then, but I have one business proposition for you." Beth was surprised and wary, then asked, "What kind of offer?" Ket continued, "I've long wanted to open my own detective agency to find cheaters. Right after my divorce from Harry, the idea caught fire, but I couldn't decide where to find a partner to work on the island. Let's work together. You and I know how to spot them and teach them first." Beth laughed and said, "You know what, I agree. It's a great idea." A few months later, Jack quickly settled on the island, but abandoned his job as a plumber and started doing paid fishing on the island. Ket and Beth opened their own detective agency and quickly hit it off. Thanks to several cases of rich cheaters, their communication became like a real friendship. They introduced their children, became literally one family. Beth completely changed her lifestyle and style. Now the girl no longer drinks, wears cowboy boots, a hat, and black glasses, such detective from Texas. Ket, on the contrary, has turned into an even bigger lady than she was before. The children of these two girls grow up insanely happy because they are surrounded by beautiful nature, fresh air, the ocean, and loving parents. By the way, Jack has changed too. He's kind of settled down. And even when Ket asked Beth to test her beloved husband for fidelity, he passed the test on all counts. It took Beth a long time to settle down, but she too found her happiness. She fell in love with a young man who worked as a remote designer in Spain, but lived on the island of Fiji. The young man also loved the style of cowboys. And most importantly, he didn't look like Harry at all. The young man had long blonde hair, green eyes, and a lean build. And in terms of character, the men were also different because Connor was glad for loyalty and hated alcohol. When Beth started dating Connor, many even joked that he was Ket's son from the future. Despite the intricacy of fates, Harry's ex-girlfriends remained happy. Each appeared not only a family, but also a successful business. But Harry himself disappeared, and they could not find him. The last news related to the man was that he found a new bride in France, who also became pregnant, but had an abortion. The news came from his mother-in-law, who was trying to get involved in her grandchildren's lives. Ket and Jack assumed the man was hiding from another girlfriend or just didn't want to pay child support. And Beth thought that Harry had drunk himself to death. Who of them is right and who is wrong? Unfortunately, it was not possible to determine.